call the meeting to order. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here and for being interested in the business of the city. Terry, can I ask you to do our invocation?
Absolutely.
Outstanding.
Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day you've given us. We thank you for this place that we live, Lord. And we pray that all the decisions made here tonight might be to your glory and to the best interest of the citizens. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Terry.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Bud. Thank you, Terry. Madam Clerk, will you conduct a roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Hall.
Here.
Ms. Hutto. Here. Mr. Merritt.
Here.
Mr. Stryker.
Here.
Chairman Riga.
Yes, here, thank you. Everybody get a chance to review the minutes from last month?
Yes, sir.
Everybody in agreement with what they say?
Yes, sir.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Very good. Madam Clerk, will you take a vote, please?
Mr. Hall.
Yes. Yes.
Ms. Hutto.
Yes.
Mr. Merritt.
Yes.
Mr. Stryker.
Yes.
Chairman Riga.
Yes, thank you. Any additions or deletions to the agenda, gentlemen, ladies, that you wanted to add today?
No.
Very good. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, anybody that would like to come and speak to the commissioners on items that are not on the agenda, please feel free to come forward and speak. Mr. Libby, how are you?
Hey, good afternoon, Mark.
Good afternoon.
There's no microphone on this van, is there?
Yes.
Okay.
I met the two new people yesterday. Welcome aboard. Thank you. Glad to see you all. Good afternoon and welcome to the planning members and the planners themselves. Our appearance today is an opportunity to ensure our petition was received, and thank you, Mrs. Riga, for making sure that happened,
You're welcome.
and to offer comments regarding the petition, while you are similarly scheduled to address a variance of the same objective, LDR 202 2020 to 631. We were made aware of the 2022 LDR effective elimination of the grandfather clause as a result of viewing the planning package documents and specifically the pending variance case of Mr. and Mrs. Razzo. Although not part of the Razzo case, we feel there is informal connectivity through the same subject matter, mutual support. All other affected property owners within a Donaldson Point area were notified, and it was found that none were aware of the 2022 rewrite affecting their property rights, and several are appearing this afternoon. We acknowledge a long-term solution and review will be required and offer our assistance in your deliberations in response to the petition. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to address you, and I ask for your recognition of Mr. Gary Brannon.
Very good.
This is on the agenda.
Yeah, this is on the agenda, so is it something, and we are going to have a public hearing, Gary and Mr. Libby, so if you wanted to address your comments actually while we're involved in that particular variance, that might be more appropriate. Is that okay?
I was, I had asked earlier, because it was not part of the scheduled item, and it was a separate, and it was identifying the petition itself, and I was steered.
So it's more of the cause regarding notification and able to
Yes,
view
yes,
the
yes,
changes
yes.
as
I'm
opposed to
strictly-
the specific. Okay, very good.
I'm
I
strictly
think we're okay
speaking
with
about
that.
the petition.
Thank you,
Yes.
Mr. Libby. Appreciate that. Gary, please.
My name's Gary Brandon, 1034 Brandon Place. I wasn't aware of this grandfather clause till a week or two ago. I would have thought I would have been informed if something this important would come up for investment property. Investment property sells differently than single home properties. When you have investment properties like duplexes and you put it on the market, investors buy them, not people that want to live in homes to live there. So when you change a clause like this, it does not do anything to help the city, it just hurts the people that own the duplexes. If it's a duplex, it doesn't involve Parker in any way. If it's a duplex, it is grandfathered in versus saying you've gotta have a variance if a new owner buys it. If you have to have a variance for a new owner buying a piece of investment property, they're gonna walk away or they're gonna offer you 50 cents on the dollar. So you're gonna lose a lot of money in your investments. I wasn't aware of this till a few weeks ago when I walked into City Hall and they asked me if I owned a duplex, and I was kind of shocked till Mr. Libby came and we went over this. I don't know why we weren't informed of this, because I come to most of the meetings and I've given the city kudos on being transparent, and now I feel like I'm slapped in the face and I'm one of the Parker 5 on the duplexes. I don't think it would be, we just want you to review it and see about changing it back. We're not here for a big fight with the city over it. I think maybe it was overlooked, but it doesn't make sense for a duplex was built in 1955.
Gary,
It's called non-compliance, non-conforming, grandfathered, but to have changed it and not informed us. I don't know if any buyer would want to buy a property that you got to get a variance on, so they're going to buy it and maybe it can still be a duplex. You know, maybe. I know it's $150 for the variance. It shouldn't even be a fee. It should just be back to what it was. We were not informed.
First of all, when you two gentlemen come to the podium, I appreciate the high level of respect you always show. Thank you, because that's who we are. And I guarantee you, we will review this. We'll review what the findings were. I do have to tell you, though, that I think if we go back, one of the things I did, because I get Mr. Libby in your letter, which indicated that there was limited exposure to the public, limited times where the public was allowed to join and see what was going on. So I asked our planner and our city clerk, I said, look, we want to be open. The planning commissioner's whole concept is to involve as many people as possible, because that's important for us to grow our city. I have a stack here, Gary and Mr. Libby, of 19 different meetings that dated all the way back now to October 5th of 2021, and then ended on the final reading. And I know your argument is both exposure to the meeting, have input, and allow the public to see what's in it. We had 8 workshops. Those workshops range from 2 to 4 hours. The public was invited. They were advertised.
The agendas were advertised.
They were agenda.
The agendas were advertised.
Yes, ma'am. They were advertised a variety of different ways, and in fact, there were some substantial changes to things like mobile home parks, RV parks, and many of those people attended. So we put it out there. We put it out there that we wanted the public's input, and we put it out there. We were interested in what you had to say so that we could alter the LDRs at that time.
Yeah. Excuse me, one of the things you're talking about.
Well, Bill, let me finish what I'm going to say, and then I promise you I'll hear you again. So, and I know part of your piece is ability to review what was done. So these 19 meetings, which were meetings, workshops, special meetings, and readings, the last 3 were readings, occurred in that September until November timeframe. And then the public, in one of my meetings, as well as advertised, the public was given from October until sometime in November an opportunity to see the final reading, the final device, okay? And that was advertised as well.
How was it
So,
advertised?
let me ask.
In the paper, in the bullet.
Oh, yes. Let me
In the
let me
what?
actually
On our website.
let me show it, Gary.
Yes, sir.
Gary, I actually have it. I'll show it
I
to
don't
you.
get the bullet.
Yeah, a variety of different ways. So,
I do have an address though.
Look at the agenda.
I do have 5 addresses in Parker.
So here's how it went out. It went out. It was advertised in the bullet, and it was advertised affidavit by the editor, because we have to do that as part of the notification. Certain individuals that were impacted, in this particular case, including Ms. Rozo, by email. We have those emails. And it was put on the marquee, and it was also put on the information board here. All of that said, we're humans. Maybe we need to look at it again.
Yeah, and I appreciate that.
Okay? But what I heard was, we didn't know. And when you've got 19 meetings, and you advertise those 4 different venues, and you allow people to come into those meetings and actually provide their input, and many did, I can't go along with your assessment that we didn't let people know. Because there were a number of people, we had hundreds of people during those 19 meetings that came in and provided their input. And like I say, many of them, came from mobile home parks, RV parks, things of that nature, because they were being impacted as well.
Would anybody that had duplex come, do you think?
I,
Anybody had a duplex or triplex come to any of these meetings?
yeah,
See,
probably not.
There, 5 in Donaldson Estate, they could have at least mailed out 5 stamps. They could have mailed it, to bring it aware, cause I come to a lot of meetings, but we don't always see everything on your marquee, and I don't do the bullet.
Oh, yeah.
And I agree, and I just want y'all to, relook at this.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't affect me as bad as some of the other people in the room that have duplexes. Mine could be converted if I had to a single family. I wouldn't wanna have to do that, but it wouldn't be a nightmare, but mine, but my friend the Walshes here, they've got 2 duplexes side by side. They couldn't be converted to anything.
You know what?
And a buyer wouldn't want it if he's gotta get a variance.
Now, it depends on where it's at now. Those duplexes, if they happen to be in an MU1, MU2, no issues there. One of the things that we have as our MO in the city is that these low-density residential areas, which are designated as single-family dwellings on single lots, the goal is to migrate towards that. There's a variety of different reasons for it, beautification purposes, those individual property owners' values of their homes, protecting those people who are already there. That's very important. And in fact, if you look at the comprehensive plan, there's segments in there which dictate that planning and the council members have very specific direction in order to make sure that those districts maintain the concept of what they're designed for, and that being single-family residential dwellings.
And I agree with
in
that
low
100%.
density. Yes, sir.
Just not grandfathered or non-compliant, non-conforming properties that are grandfathered in.
Oh, yeah.
Should be left alone. There's not that many of them. There's 5 of them. It's
And
not
Donaldson
like it's
Point.
flooded.
And we need to bring it back. And we
Okay.
need to bring it back and take a look at it, because maybe we have to take a second look. We did get input though, and most of the input came from people who had properties that ultimately had single-family homes that were next to multifamily homes, and they too felt as though property values were impacted as a result. And I suspect, can't remember unless I go back and look at the notes from a year and a half ago, but I suspect that may be why we took that stance.
Well, see, those homes that people that aren't happy with a duplex next to them were built years later than the duplexes. So they shouldn't have bought the property if it was next to a duplex they don't like.
Yeah, but
We were
Anyway.
there first.
Gary, I appreciate your comments. Appreciate your comments, and
All right,
thank you.
thank you.
And thanks again for the way you communicate, you too, Mr. Libby.
Thanks
Yes,
for
sir.
the info on that.
Yes, sir.
What I was depending on was the notices going out on the emails. And the agendas simply had workshop.
Yeah.
There was no, did you put out anything? And I just wanna know myself. I'm the bad guy here, so I'm not
You're not the
pushing you.
bad guy, Mr.
But I
Libby.
didn't know, and I took it as an example, because I don't have a lot. When I heard you all were talking about RVs, and I showed up and I was the only one there, and I made sure you all didn't do what you were planning on doing. But I was available, and I just thought that maybe my case might have been a little bit wider than what it was. That's all.
Yeah, yeah.
That's all.
Appreciate
And
it.
when you changed, were all the people notified when they were changed of this? of this change in the LDR?
I know that the emails are extensive, the email lists are extensive.
Well, you got 5
I know the
property owners here.
I know the marquee was run for a significant number of days. I know the information board was, and of course the newspaper. Those are the things that we're legally required to do.
Oh, okay.
If you're a community, believe it or not, less than 155,000 people, you can't just use electronic media. You can, but you have to show that at least 75% of the populace has access to that.
I understand.
And we didn't even want to do that research. We just said, let's do it in the paper, let's go ahead and send out emails, let's go ahead and put it on the marquee, and let's put it on the information
And I
board. So that's
understand
what we
that.
did.
And I suspect that some of the affected people weren't as lazy as I was. But I bet there was a couple cases where you didn't get representatives for things that you were working on.
Yeah,
And that's all I'm saying. And that's,
You do what you can, and which is reasonable in order to get the word out, and I'm confident we did that.
well, I know you all were hustling. I know it was a grind.
You're right, because we had well over it. We saved the city tens of thousands of dollars in doing it this way, and in fact, I think for the most part, we ended up with a pretty darn good product. Yeah. Thank you for your comments, gentlemen. Anybody else? Okay, let's get going on the first item of the agenda here. Is Mr. Johnson in the room?
He is.
Oh, hey, Mr. Johnson, how are you, sir?
Always go first.
Hey, Adam Johnson, I think it's Lake Drive. Is that what's on
Yes,
there?
sir.
Yes,
Yep.
sir.
It's just a lot split.
Yes,
That
sir.
one. We demoed the trailer and all the derelict stuff on the property and just wanted to split that into usable lots, single family.
Thank you, sir, and I did get that site survey, so thank you.
Yes, sir.
Everybody had a chance to look at the site survey and
Yes.
the lot split request here?
Yes.
Gentlemen, just to give you kind of you know, it looks like in total, it looks like it's about .8 acres. Looks like about .02 acres of it's gonna be split off to become a single-family
Yes, sir.
dwelling, is that right? That's well within the guidelines. He has to have is this low-density residential here?
Yes, sir.
Low-density residential, he's gotta have .2 acres in order to do that. He's well beyond that, well
Right.
beyond the 7,500 square
About
feet.
12,000.
Anybody have any
both.
questions for Mr. Johnson?
This is just out of curiosity, it's about a third of the lot.
Why not an
Yeah,
even
we-
split?
Well, and the engineer advised us that if we wanted to do the third one in the future, have 3 60-foot lots, we have to replat the third
Yeah,
one. So
yeah.
that gives us the opportunity to build the first 2 and then have to replat the third one
Gotcha.
if it provides it. We want them all, the other 2 that we're doing, that we're building now, those are 60 by 200s. And so ultimately we would want, hopefully we would get to 3, but we know the 2 are good, and then if we have to replat to get the third
The
one.
other
we
one.
can do that.
How
Yeah.
big was the parent track when it started, you know?
I'm not sure.
I think it's
Mr. Regan.
.8 acres.
Yes,
Point
sir.
eight
0.8.
three, I think, is what
So
they
is this-
have.
is this
Point
the
eight three
first-
on the
this the
property
first
appraiser
split?
side.
Correct, yes, sir. And it would, and obviously under the LDR, it would have to be platted to be the third one. We've had that discussion.
Gotcha, okay, very good. But we're just doing a simple
Just the
split.
2, yes, sir.
And it looks like about a
Single
third of
lines.
it's gonna be
Correct.
siphoned off.
Mhm.
Very good,
I'll make a motion to refer it to the city council for them to look at.
very good.
With a recommendation.
With a recommendation to
Recommendation.
move forward with it? Okay, very good. So, the motion on the floor is to go ahead and approve it and send it over to the city council for their review and approval, or review and determination. All right, do I get a
To
second?
recommend
Second it.
approval.
Second?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, to recommend it then, okay, very good. Madam Clerk, can we
I'm
get
sorry, who was the second? I was,
Mr.
thank you, Mr.
Captain
Hall.
Hall? Very good. Can I get a vote, please?
Yes. Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Ms. Hutto?
Yes.
Mr. Merritt? Mr. Stryker?
Yes.
Chairman Riga?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Appreciate improving the neighborhood.
Yes, sir, thank you. And the question on the follow-up on West Street, did we get to that?
I have talked with the engineer, and I'm waiting for her final review, but I don't have it yet, so.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we're going to migrate over to variance requests, and these are going to be public hearings. So the way the public hearings will work is we'll ask the applicant to come up and tell us what they're doing, what they're doing with regard to the variance, what their intentions are, and then the public will have an opportunity to review and ask questions. So do we have, let's see here.
Brian Hall.
Is Brian here? Mr. Forehand.
Mr. Forehand, very good, thank you. I got Mr. Hall would like permission to build a shed, is that wrong?
Mr. Hall, is my understanding he is the property owner
Yes,
and
ma'am.
you
Yes, ma'am.
rent from him, but
Yes.
it is your intent to be the one who rebuilds the shed?
Yes,
Okay. I didn't, it wasn't clear to me when I got
So,
the paperwork.
what's your name, sir, I'm sorry?
Ken Forehand.
Mr. Forehand? Thank you, Mr. Forehand. If you don't mind, just kind of give us an understanding of where you're at, what you're trying to do here.
Yes, I'm on 1039 East Park down there in a mobile home, and I've had a shed down there. It's been there forever and ever, and the hurricane did some damage to it. So I took a couple of feet of it off and closed it back up, and it's not very eye-appealing to look at. But I have 2 large oak trees in the yard that stopping me from coming over to the limit to, if I come over to the 10 foot or whatever they're talking about, then I can't
Your
rebuild the shed.
setback. If you're
Because I got two
5
big oak
foot-
trees
5 foot off
that
the
stops it.
It's a
Okay.
road.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I drove down through there
It's on the corner.
today.
Is that a road or a public access? So Davis Lane, so that's a,
It's a
Is-
marked road. I
It's a
mean,
marked road, yeah.
911 road.
It's a
But it-
road, I reckon. It's
But it is not paved.
Yeah, it's a little bitty road.
No.
Yeah.
looks like a,
If
looks
you
like
put
a,
7 feet, he's still in the setback.
Yeah.
looks like it's just an alley, unpaved alley.
That's what it is.
Yeah, well, but it's not an alley, it actually has a name to it
It
and
is,
a
okay.
green, like, state sign for the road.
So we're not talking about a 5 foot shed, side yard setback, we're talking 7 foot, right?
Still in the 5 foot, he's only a few feet off of the side. He'd be in the 5 foot setback as well.
Oh, so we're really just talking about an 8 inches, cause it looks like he's got the
No.
building parked about 52 inches off his property line.
Right.
That's where I want to do it. It was 16, 18 inches or something like that.
He's gonna move it to 52 inches.
And I'm gonna move it to 52 inches to be able to build it, but I can't come over no further and have a shed of any size because I got 2 big oak trees.
I gotcha, okay. Well, so in reviewing, the protection trees, particularly the new LDRs, there's a real strong desire to protect the trees that we have there. There are provisions in the LDRs which do allow us to provide variances based, for example, parking. If you got a builder who has a required number of parking spots, we have the ability, or at least council does, to determine that they can have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 less parking spots that are required in order for the greater good of protecting those trees. So we're just talking about an 8-inch
8
change,
inches.
right?
Yep.
8 inch here, is that accurate, 8 inches? And so that we can protect a number of trees, and you're taking another shed down, which is non-compliant at this time, is that right?
I have actually a tent that's over a concrete slab, and I took part of it down because it was too close to the road, and I will take it all the way down. My table saws and the tools that I need to build my shed are in it, and as soon as if I can build this new shed, then the tent will come completely, and if I can't, the tent's gotta come down, but if the tent comes down, then I'm gonna have tools and stuff that's open to the environment on the concrete slab.
Okay.
I
And
drove
it's
by
not, I mean, I'm gonna build a nice looking shed right now, it doesn't look very appealing. And the way I look out my window, so look at it, it's been like this since the hurricane, and this is the first time I've really got serious about building a new one, cause I've been told no.
I
But
get you.
not only will it be better for me, but it'd be better for the city to look at. I mean, and the neighbors and all that stuff, they don't have to look at this shed.
Mr. Horton, so the front of your property, is that Fifth Street? Is
The
that,
front is the West Park. I'm on the corner of East Park, excuse me, I'm on the corner of East Park
East
And
Park?
Fifth.
Okay.
and then Fifth Street and then the Davis Lane. I'm in
In the front of the property though, your
The-
dwelling?
The
it's
home
called,
faces
it's
Fifth.
called 1039 East Park.
So that Davis Lane, that would be like if you're standing at the front, it kind of
His
be like
front
the
door
left. I
faces
got you.
Davis Lane.
Yeah, my
I
front door
guess.
is facing Davis Lane. There's nothing on the rear side
No,
of it.
no,
No, no,
is on Fifth.
Fifth Street, excuse me.
Davis is to
I
the
told you I get
left.
confused easy with this
East
place.
Park is to the right.
Okay,
And if you drive by at Christmas, they normally have lovely Christmas decorations.
okay.
Mark,
Please, I've got it here, but thank you. So really what we're looking at here is the preservation of trees.
Yeah.
And pretty important. Gentleman wants to take down kind of a shed that's already there, which is probably non-compliant, but that'll sort of help beautify
And it
things.
will, and the one that I'm gonna rebuild, take down and rebuild, it will be so much better. It's a shed, it's a wooden shed, and the tent will come down,
Yes,
that'll
sir.
come down. But I wouldn't take my 2 oak trees down if I can't build it, my oak trees ain't coming down.
So-
Hang on to those.
So ultimately, now you are gonna, is that shed gonna be 14 by 16, so you'll need a permit for that,
Okay.
because it's beyond de minimis. De minimis is 120 square feet in Parker. He's looking for an 8-inch variance, guys. Let me ask you a question about that. Is that to the hard end of the building, or is that the overhead, or the overhang? Because
Can I
you're
look at the
52
paperwork?
inches.
I don't have the paperwork, I can show you right there looking at it.
Well, I'm just trying to determine whether or not that's actually
Okay, originally, it was 26 inches, so the new one at 52 inches is gonna be over, and it's gonna be past the concrete slab that's there a little bit. Like here's concrete slab, I can't bust that concrete.
But the 52 inches, that's to the hard part of the building?
Yes.
That's the wall, to the
That's
wall?
the
Or the
Okay.
roof.
Okay, because, and that was, okay, because some people look at the eave, and interesting enough, the eave doesn't count. It's to the hard part of the building.
Yes,
So I was thinking, if you had at least an 8-inch eave, maybe you didn't need any kind of a, variance at all. But it looks like you do. So, do we have any questions?
I drove by that place. It's impeccable. He keeps it extremely nice. So I got confidence whatever he puts up is gonna look good.
Mr. Chair, for the benefit of the 2 new planning commissioners, I need to make sure everyone understands the requirements for the variance. So, particularly for you two, in order for a variance to be recommended to the city council, the applicant, in this case, this gentleman, has to show by clear and convincing evidence, and having the burden of proof and persuasion, the following items: that there is a specific hardship affecting the development of the property resulting from the strict application of the provisions of these regulations. Number 2, the hardship is not a result of actions of the owner and is not based solely on a desire to reduce development costs. Number 3, the proposed variance is necessary to preserve a substantial property right where such property right is generally available to other property owners of adjacent or nearby properties or other properties in the land use category. Number 4, the proposed variance will not materially increase congestion on surrounding streets, increase the danger of fire or other hazard, or otherwise be detrimental to the health, safety, and general welfare of the public. Number 5, the proposed variance will be compatible with adjacent and nearby development and will not alter the essential character of the land use district. Number 6, the effect of the proposed variance is consistent with the purposes of the regulations. And number 7, the effect of the proposed variance is consistent with the comprehensive plan. So those items have to be shown by clear and convincing evidence by the applicant in order for you to recommend approval to the city council on any variance.
I do have a question for clarification. So
Yes, sir.
if you get the variance, you would not have to remove the trees?
No, sir, I'm not gonna remove my trees.
Okay.
They're not, I mean, my trees are, it's like, no, I'm not taking my trees down.
Good.
The hurricane got a couple of them, and I don't want these actually soak up lots and lots of water. Takes lots of water to feed these trees. And I have lots of plants and lots of shrubbery in my yard, and it takes a lot of water to keep them fed. I actually have another big oak tree in the front, but it ain't going either. I trimmed it because of the big limbs coming off of it over my mobile home that I don't want on my mobile home. Then I trimmed these that I'm talking about, so the limbs ain't hanging over my mobile home.
Mr. Forehand, this is a public hearing, so I'm gonna ask the public if anybody has any comments regarding this particular variance. Does anybody else have any thoughts, ideas that they want to share with the public? Very good, very good. All right, well, if that's the case, then let me just ask, what are your thoughts, ladies and gentlemen? Impeccable property, the greater good to preserve some trees.
Yep.
He's answered the affirmative on all 7 of the variance questions. He's come before us. He knows he needs a permit in order to build it because it's beyond the 120 square foot de minimis.
Make a motion that we recommend this to the council.
I'll second.
Very good. Madam Clerk, will you take a vote, please?
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Ms. Hutter?
Yes.
Mr. Merritt?
Yes.
Mr. Stryker?
Yes.
Chairman Reagan?
Yes. Go build a nice shed, sir. Make us proud.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Hold
you'll-
tight, coming
you'll
from
have
the
to
well,
council
before the
first.
Yeah,
city council.
Come in
Mr.
front of the
Bohan,
council first.
you still have to go before the council members.
Yes, sir.
But,
On the 15th.
you know, they're, yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Very
Thank
good.
you.
And then after that, I can,
They'll give you
Get a
their
permit
blessing
bill.
or not.
ma'am?
They'll give you their blessing or not,
Okay.
but hopefully we'll see a lovely shed.
Okay, yeah. Make y'all, make me happy. I should make y'all
Right.
happy.
Very good. Item 3, 1440 Dover Road. It's another variance. We're still involved in a public hearing. Ms. Rozo, are you gonna be speaking? George?
Actually, Mr. Rose is not here, but I'll be.
Miss Rozo?
Mr.
Yeah, yeah. Did somebody say Mr. Rozo? Is it
Yeah,
Miss
it's her.
Miss
He said
Rozo?
miss.
Ah, maybe
Got
I
a different
misspoke.
name.
How do you pronounce your last name, George?
Just like Smith, Harold Labidas.
Oh, very good, very good. If you don't mind, kind of tell us a little bit about what it is that you want to do and just give us sort of a summary.
So we have probably one of the most unique multiplexes. It's a triplex. You know, you're across the street from us. So the 2 of the apartments are on Dover Road. The 3rd one is, let's say, 1 level below. It's facing the water. Almost impossible to blend into one house. So you also know that, at least in my case, and my wife's or whatever, we don't live here permanently. If we did get an email, I don't remember one. I know I look at the water ones to make sure the water bill is getting paid or whatever, but I didn't know that the grandfather clause was removed. So we're obviously coming here because we have several pieces that, you know, we bought in the area, we're trying to sell. One of those pieces is the 1440 Dover Road house. And like the gentleman here said, we've had several, let's say, offers, but they're all contingent on what? On the possibility of this continuing to being a triplex. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that the person wants the triplex to rent potentially. Maybe, you know, I know one had a sick mother or whatever. They might want to share different apartments. But someone might actually want to use it as a triplex, or, you know, keep one apartment and rent the other 2, or whatever the combinations are. But we need to have that variance granted so that we can, let's say, when we sell the house, and we're under contract, in fact, right now, to be
questions now. I mean, I wrote out a very detailed response
Right.
to the criteria.
Because we
So
did
I
file
don't know
the
if you
permit,
wanna
right?
do it.
You did file the
Variance.
variance request, right?
So I know, Mr. Sloan, when you go through number one, you ask the question, do you want me to respond to each one?
It's up to the chair. Mr. Chair, what do you want me to do?
Ms. Rosso, I think it's probably an appropriate thing because it's a public hearing and there's a number of people that probably don't have the detail we do. So, if it's all right with you, could we do that?
That's fine.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be helpful to everybody to understand what's going on. Mr. Sloan, will you,
Yes,
read
sir.
through that? Or I can just give you a copy of there and then it's got the questions on it.
Well, I know sometimes
okay,
we don't
I
all
gotcha.
have all
So
the.
to be clear, we're requesting a variance concerning the land development regulation, section 6-3.1. Number 6, our aim is to secure permission for the continued non-conforming use of our property, a triplex, in a residential neighborhood, in the event of ownership. And we aren't in change of ownership. Yeah.
Okay.
So you wanna
Mr.
go
Chair,
first?
again, the burden of proof and persuasion is on the applicant, and they must show by clear and convincing evidence they're entitled to each of the following elements, or an affirmative answer to each of the following elements. The first is there is a specific hardship affecting the development of the property resulting from the strict application of the provision of these regulations.
Our answer is yes, because, but also too, we're not trying to develop our property, we're just trying to sell the property, and it is a triplex built in 1950. And, as my husband said, we didn't realize that, the zoning had changed on our property until actually a couple prospective buyers brought it to our attention. So we've already lost at least one buyer, so that definitely is a hardship for us.
So that's a yes on this one.
Okay.
So that's a yes.
But also too, okay, well, carrying out the strict letter of this land development regulation would require us and or the new owners to discontinue the use of the home as a multifamily dwelling, which is extremely impractical and is causing us economic difficulty. So, I guess that's it. I mean, there's more detail here. I don't wanna read off the whole thing.
Plus, they have copies of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You do? Okay.
Want to do the next
Yeah.
question?
The only other,
Let me ask you a question though. Because the city has documentation from you that shows that you were converting it to a single-family dwelling.
we
do you
had
have
plans to do that, and we even hired an architect.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
at the time that you were writing the LDRs, we had an architect working on redeveloping the property. But by the time that was like, November 2022 is when you guys decided to, or whatever, voted to, confirm the
adopt the new ones.
LDRs.
Mhm.
And so we were in process, cause at the time, architects were backlogged and it was
Yeah.
hard. But anyway, that architect said that it was gonna be more cost effective for us to tear it down.
Nice.
So then we took a step back, but
Hold
also
on.
in October 2022 is when the mayor started to code us and we felt unwelcome in this community. So we took a step back and we thought, well, maybe we should be leaving and then let's leave it as is.
And to be honest, I think you might know that too, Mark, because like I said, at the time you were the neighbor across the street.
He is telling
We were working on the beer and wine garden.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So we were using those two apartments as storage units
No, but
for
we
all
were-
the stuff that we were going to put in that. So when all those things fell apart and fell through, then we just decided, okay, fine, we're putting up everything for sale. We know exactly how some of the people feel about us being here. So we decided to sell everything and leave. So now we're at the stage of selling it and now, now we have another issue, which is obviously this.
Yeah,
So I would call it a hardship. I don't know what you would call it.
That's
If
it
you're not
seems
able
like a
to-
hardship. But I guess my point is this. There's actually, even if this is the old LDRs, this is the one that you guys purchased
When we
on.
bought
Okay.
it, yes, and
Yeah.
I.
Right.
And so it sounds like you discontinued the use of it being a triplex. And even in the old LDRs, when you discontinued the use of a multifamily home in a low-density residential area, and you do that for more than 180 days, you then lose that right to
But we
keep
did
it
this
as
with
that.
to simply use this as a temporary
But we also
storage
had,
until
we had
we
family
get
coming in and
to
using
a
it too.
decision.
My point is that if these guys are calling balls and strikes here, okay?
Okay.
And even if I don't look at the new LDRs, which is this big book right
Right.
here, if I look at the old one, and if we just apply the rule directly as it states, what we really got is a use change already. When you migrate to a use change and you no longer use it as a multifamily dwelling, then after 180 days, you lose that right, because then the importance of it being a low-density residential dwelling and the neighbors and the neighborhood and the district it's in takes precedent. That's the old LDRs. That's not even moving to the new ones. That's about, and you probably read this, because I know you're very, very adept at this, but there's also a section there that says, and this is the old one again, it's a change in use. Should a non-conforming use be converted in whole or in part to a conforming use, that portion of the non-conforming use so converted shall lose its non-conforming status.
Okay, English, so what, we never really changed the use, we kept the apartment.
You never changed the structure.
Right.
You changed the use.
We didn't use it.
Exactly. Didn't
Because-
use it as a multifamily dwelling.
So we should have kept renting it? Is that what you're?
or had multiple families in it, because the way that these are written are that if you stop using it like it was intended, because the concept is over time that a single family low density residential area will migrate entirely to that for the benefit of that district. And that's why these rules were originally written. Now,
So you're telling me that even now, for example, if I don't sell it, I cannot rent it, or?
you can rent it, but as
Okay.
a single family dwelling, because it's in a low density residential area.
But it can
So-
never be with single family, because it's three
Built as a
distinct
triplex.
units. And you know that, I mean, one is
Well,
bottom, water, street, top.
One of the things
How
that
is it
one of the
ever
things
gonna
that
be?
in our due diligence, we had asked our city hall for, was the past variance, because I remember Jamie was
Right.
our clerk at the time, and Ms. Rozo, so when you said that we intend to convert the first floor into a single-family dwelling, the city was alerted at that point
Okay, I can
that
change
you
my
were
mind,
changing
can
it. You can, but
Okay.
this is documentation
Okay.
that you went for a variance.
Yes.
You gained that variance based on the information you provided.
Sure.
And after that, you told me I didn't need a variance, that I was grandfathered in for what I was requesting. But okay,
The variance was for the garage.
yes, what the architect wanted.
Somebody
to
told
do.
you that you didn't need a variance for that?
You did when I sat down.
I said that?
Yeah, I
I
said,
didn't
it's
say
fine,
that.
it's fine.
I wouldn't have said
But that was for the, what we were thinking of.
As a matter of fact, I have an email where I explained to you that you would need a variance. Do you want to see it?
No, not
Okay.
this time.
Are you gonna take your words back then? Because I didn't tell you that.
But I didn't need to pay $150 for the variance because I was grandfathered in on how that property
This
was built.
variance you were granted. You were
I know.
granted this
Okay.
variance.
Okay, my recollection is that you had said I didn't need to get a variance.
No.
Okay.
My recollection was that you didn't have to come to planning because it was a minor, and you'd need to go to council. You went to council, and council granted the variance based on your words that you were converting this to a single-family dwelling.
Okay,
Okay, so that's a use change. That's documentation that this is a use change. Mr. Sloan, am I off the rail here, or is this accurate?
Well, based upon the representations that were presented to the city took an action in reliance upon those representations. They granted a variance in reliance upon the representations that were made.
Right.
So those representations were the basis of that variance.
Yes.
but it doesn't lock us in to you know,
It-
doing what, I mean, it's our property, and if
It-
we change our mind,
It's an
and we
indic-
don't want to build, then that should be our property right, our vested right in it.
You were you permitted, you gave the city architectural drawings that you were
Right.
converting it
Okay,
to a
so
single-family
it didn't
dwelling.
happen, though.
But the use has changed. At that point, when the
That
variance
was allowed, so it was, we were trying to keep the same footprint, and we just didn't, I think there was something about it had to be 8 inches away or 20.
You're talking about the garage.
It
I'm
doesn't
talking,
mean that the whole
I'm talking,
property changed its use.
but
We never developed it as a single family.
when you
dwelling.
filled out the variance request that you took to council, what they read is what I just read to you, that you're changing it to a single-family dwelling and you're requesting the variance on the garage.
We were hoping to, does it say hoping to?
It says your intent is to.
Okay,
Right,
but it
yes, Mark.
changed.
And then the variance was granted.
Mark, we did, like you said, as an architect, to see the feasibility of doing this. And part of what he had to do is make sure that if a variance is needed, like it was needed in that particular case, the city would give us that variance to be able to do that. It didn't happen.
But the city doesn't grant a contingent variance. The city granted you a variance based upon your representation. Your representation, you started with a duplex, I believe it actually says a duplex on the existing plan, and the plan you were proposing was a single-family residence. Because you represented that to the city in reliance upon that representation granted you a variance. It didn't say, we're only gonna give you this variance if you really do that. No, the city said, you've applied to do that, the city's granting you a variance to do that. So what the chair is talking about is you have represented to the city that you converted that property to a single-family residence.
We had not converted it.
Based on that,
We were going to, right? Didn't
but
happen.
you've submitted an application that
Did
said
not
that's
happen.
what you were doing.
Did not happen, right.
Well,
That was the plan.
part of
Didn't
the,
happen.
and one of the other documents that the city was provided was, we have these backwater certification requirements for rentals of multiple family dwellings. A letter was sent, you responded to it, you identified that you no longer needed that backwater certification,
Backflow.
backflow certification, because you were no longer gonna use it as that. So the city had the variance, the approval of the variance, your words about the backflow preventer, that you were gonna stop using it as that. So if I resort back to the old rules, and I don't have to go to the new ones.
Right.
Because the new ones definitely prevent it because of change of ownership. But when the use changes, then and there were 3 pieces of information that led the city to believe that the use had changed. So as a result of that, you then lose the legal non-conforming structure or legal non-conforming use. So that's where we're at.
Okay. So I guess you don't need us to go through the other pieces?
No,
Well,
Or-
there's a piece of it. I mean,
Okay.
we're gonna hear from anybody else that wants to speak as well, but
Okay.
Ms.
But I
Rosie,
think
you had
we do,
identified
because
that you
that
hadn't
was-
heard
I
about
thought
any of
so.
these things. And in fact, what they provided me were documents where you had attended some of the meetings where some of the new LDRs were discussed. So when you had said, this is the first we heard of it since 2021, it's the first thing that was glaring, is because you know these LDRs probably better than anybody. I mean, you
No,
cite them right, well,
I
you-
went okay, if
Okay,
you
you
really want
don't.
me to critique your meetings on the LDRs, one of the agendas only said LDR review. I also printed off all 2022, and it doesn't specify, like even chapter 6, non-conforming use, and really to a layman, what is non-conforming use? Does it, I never
That's
really
why,
knew
that's
when
why
a
people come
duplex
to the
to a single.
workshops. It's why people come to the workshops, it's why they come to the meetings, it's why they, engage and ask questions. And, so anyway, that's where we're at.
Can we go then to the next question? Or?
Well,
But it's causing us, if the question is, economic hardship, for question number 1, it would definitely cause us economic hardship.
Yes.
And I still believe it's an unjustified expense for us to transfer it into a single-family dwelling at this time.
Yeah. Okay, I get that.
Wanna go to number 2?
It seems like, but it seems like, you know, the variance test, the very first one, the concept was that moving to the new LDRs caused the hardship. It didn't. The hardship was you guys changing the use of the property and documenting it, and then asking for a variance based on it, and then being granted that variance based on the use change.
Sure.
Those things all happen.
I'm not saying it didn't happen, but understand also just as somebody coming in, right? You coming in, oh, the backflow. I don't know what the heck the backflow thing is. Sure. make
The
it
letter
one
was
because-
specific, George. It specifically said if you're
Mark?
gonna stop using it as a rental piece of property,
Mark,
multiple
I
family.
get that. I'm
Okay.
just saying, I'm just trying to explain that when you're saying we never change the use, we just hire an architect, see, even we were to do this.
You didn't
because we
change
wanna
the structure, you changed the use. There's two different things, very different.
Fine. All I'm saying
It
is.
still could be used as a
Okay,
triplex.
look, by the way, is short-term use available to us?
Is what?
Short-term
use
rentals.
available to us.
I don't think there's any rules that
We don't have
indicate a
prohibition
structure.
on short-term,
Yeah.
unless there's a homeowners association that might prevent it, but the city has no provision to prohibit short-term rentals of a single-family residence.
Okay, but you're saying we have to convert it into a single-family
No,
home,
no,
which
you
is.
don't have to
Not for
convert
short-term.
it. You all have done that. You've converted it.
No, we haven't, it's still a
That-
triplex.
No.
In use, but
In
not
terms
in.
of that, yes. So short-term use can still be available to us.
For a single-family
For a
residence.
single
For
family
single
dwelling.
family,
Okay.
but we can't keep the apartments.
Yeah. See, the issue is, it's in a low-density residential area. And that, we have an MO to keep those things pure. And so that means that when the old structures either go away, they get blown away by a hurricane, or a use change, or somebody comes in and buys the property because they love the view and, you know, bulldoze it and build a beautiful new home, it's gotta be a single-family structure. When the use changes, which it has, and there's documentation which clearly pointed to that, to us, to the city, then ultimately, it becomes a single-family dwelling at that point. So that's where we're at right now. And again, that's old LDRs, that's not even migrating to the new ones. So the original intention was that the new LDRs, which stated that the trigger for that had to do with ownership change. But even the old LDR and the new LDRs both say, if you stop using it as a multiple family
So
dwelling,
bottom line
then
is
you
that-
lose that non-conforming structure.
That you will not consider this is something.
These people have to vote, and then the council has to vote. We're an advisory committee. So whatever happens here, they're probably gonna hear what we had to say.
Sure,
But we
absolutely.
need
And
Still-
then you get a chance to go before them. But this is a public hearing. We're gonna hear what other people here in this
Absolutely.
room have to
Was
say.
it a judicial hearing, Mr. Sloan? Should we have been
Public
sworn
hearing.
in?
No, it's a public hearing, not a judicial.
Okay, but this is, I mean, we'd still answer in the affirmative that this is a specific hardship affecting the development of our property.
Right.
Okay, so I still say yes to that. Should we continue to number 2?
Do it.
Sure.
Do it.
Number 2 is the hardship is not a result of the actions of the owner and is not based solely upon a desire to reduce the development cost.
All right, well, I contend that the hardship was not a result of anything we did, although Mr. Riga has pulled out a couple of variances or documents that I
These
didn't
are
realize
different,
would
right?
affect the use of my home. I thought I could change my mind. Should I have gone back to the city and said, who should I have talked to
Ms.
that we
Rosa,
changed our mind
once again,
about the use of the property?
You told the city that you were changing it to a single-family dwelling, and you went for a variance based on that information. The council members then granted you that variance based on the information you gave them.
We were having designs to do it. It wasn't for sure. He
But-
just was in the middle of
Uh,
designing, and he
okay.
wanted to make sure the designs would be.
Again, I'm
okay.
bringing that up because your initial contention was that it was the new LDRs that were preventing this. It's not. It's the old ones, which have been in place for many years before that, and the current ones.
The old ones were 2012.
Yeah.
I thought it was 2019.
No.
All right, well, I do wanna make a case though, if I thought for the new LDRs that we were never notified. And there's state law that said you should have mailed us, that Mr. Brannon was trying to point out. And yes, there's emails, but, so we never got notified, we never had due process.
And Mr. Chair, did I see some emails where they were on the email list receiving a
They
copy
are.
of the
They
proposed
are.
LDR?
Are
There
there
were-
other duplexes in the city of Parker besides Donaldson Point?
There are.
Were any of those people notified?
All of the notifications went out via newspaper,
Okay.
via email,
Okay.
via marquee, and via information on the information board on City Hall.
Okay.
But Florida statute 166 says that the local governments are required to notify property owners when there are changes to land development regulations that may affect their property. And there are certain procedures, and you didn't follow it. It says that you were supposed to, the notice show, you're supposed to.
Miss Rosa, let me
mail
come
it out.
back to something different. Even if we don't notify you about what's in the new one, the old one, before you got here, disallows it. So what you're talking about is irrelevant. The old one says if you change the use, which you did, then you lose that non-conforming status. So whether or not you were notified about what's in the new information, even though I think we could argue that notification went out as per law, it's the old one that's preventing, and that one was here well before you came to town.
But even, you're saying that changed the use, but that is a hardship on us that we are not, the city's not allowing us to change our mind.
Listen, here, at the end of the day, we're advisory committee. Again, we're supposed to be calling based on what we know and interpret the LDRs to be. I'm showing you a very specific, very clinical understanding of what the LDRs are. I read your argument. I went ahead and then looked at the old LDRs. I saw that you were wrong. The old LDRs even prevented you from migrating it to selling it now as a triplex. So that wiped out the first argument. Then I went to the second argument. You hadn't been notified. I saw emails that were sent directly to you, which showed when those meetings were occurred. I then asked the prior clerk how they were notified. She said, newspaper, we have those articles.
Fine, but
We
they're-
have all of that stuff, which shows that you received notification.
No, all right, but the information, and I did attend some, but we are out of town. And I even had to make a public records request because I was so frustrated when I went to a meeting, a planning commission meeting, and you read off the section. Information was never even at a meeting for us to pick up.
That's why there were 3 weeks from October until November that the public was invited to come and read the new regulations.
But
There
as you were
and that was
reviewing them-
notified. It's in the newspaper, it was on the marquee, it's on the front billboard, and it was emailed to people
The
throughout
whole
the city.
document for people to review in
Not,
advance of the meeting?
just that they could come and pick up a copy of the document.
Okay, another question. Could this be considered selective enforcement? Because I think Mr. Haney, didn't he have an automobile business wherever, I forget the address of it, and then he went to Springfield, as I understand, and then he left it unused, and then he was able to come back.
If
So
that
wouldn't
happened,
that
that was
be,
a violation.
you allow him to do that, but
Well,
you're coming
we'd have
down
to know
hard
the
on
facts,
us.
Mr.
Yeah.
Chair.
Yeah,
I don't know that we could say that as a
Yeah,
categorical date, because we don't know all the facts.
I'm saying if it happened the way she just described, but, you know, I'd have to look at the detail. It's, you know, we'd have to look at the facts.
So at this point,
That
should
was
I
before
continue
us.
going through the 7?
We,
Or-
Yeah, it
either that
sounds
or we
like
could-
you already made up your minds, right? Not to.
No,
We-
sir, I
we
wouldn't
are
say
allowed
that.
to
I'm
process
There's five
simply
people on
identifying the
this.
facts.
There's 5
Okay, Mark,
people on
yeah,
this
sure.
planning commission,
Mhm.
so you've heard the chair. we're
We
having
haven't
a
talked
public
about
hearing.
it, yeah.
And the public can speak on this item.
Right.
And then it will come up to the to the planning commission for the planning commission discussion.
Very good.
I have another question. Should my neighbors recuse themselves?
They can
Because
recuse
he
them.
sat there and saw our property, and he knew the rules, and never as a neighbor said, hey, 180 days, you're not using it, whatever happened, how come you didn't build it
Because
into
the
a
first
single
email
family
you sent me,
dwelling?
you want me to give you the email you sent me? The email you sent to April Gibson, which got bounced back to you, and then you sent it back to her, and then you sent it to me, said, you're changing it to a single family dwelling. You want a copy of it?
Okay, but I was hoping to do it.
But you're standing here right now saying that I came and viewed your property,
You
thinking
live
what?
across
That
the
I was gonna read
street.
your mind and
No.
think you weren't gonna do this?
Well, you notice,
No,
we
Miss
live,
Rosa,
you never saw
none of
construction
that
going
plays,
on.
none of that plays, that's a bunch of baloney.
Let's,
It's
either
respectful,
have
but
the
you do
public
live
hearing
across the
or
street.
have the discussion.
And you
I would
do
like
too,
to speak.
Mr. Hall, and
Listen,
Gary
listen.
Stryker is, so potentially you guys should be recusing yourself because you can't be fair
Well,
and impartial. Because
actually,
you may not want
I will
a
ask
triplex
anybody to
across the street
recuse,
from
I
you.
will ask any of these voter, now, again, we're an advisory council. So ultimately, if someone chooses to believe that they cannot be, completely impartial, then they could recuse, they'll have that option. But again, it'll go to the council after this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
It's a hearing,
Does-
so I guess.
I would like to be called.
It's a public hearing.
please
It's a
do,
hearing.
Paul.
Well, Paul Palmer, you all know me, 1135 West Street. So, I did not know about her requesting a single-use variance thing. So what I really have to say,
Paul, let me
is-
tell you this, you were on the board when it came before us. That's okay.
And it came before the planning commission with a representation. It was currently, at the time, a duplex, not a triplex.
as I said, I did not remember it, nor that was my thing. But I do have some case law that shows that I'll give you copies of these sites so that you can record them. This will reflect more on Mr. Libby's request for a change in ordinance. What does the case law state in Florida about following Florida cases support the position that a non-conforming use runs with the land and is not terminated by a change of ownership? Again, this doesn't specifically apply because of this, but it applies in an indirect way. C. Lewis versus City of Atlantic Beach, 467, SO2D, 751, 754, Florida 1st, DCA, 1985. Summary. It is clear that the concept of grandfathered, non-conforming use relates to the property and the use thereof, not to the type of ownership or leasehold interest in the property. C. Hobbs versus Department of Transportation, 831, SO 2nd D, 745, 748, Florida 5th, DCA, 2002. Citing Lewis and holding that non-conforming use did not become illegal simply because the entity which applied for the permit to use the sign changed. See also 83 AM jurisdiction, second zoning and planning, paragraph 555. A non-conforming use is not personal in nature, but runs with the land and is not affected by the user's title or possessory rights in relationship to the owner of the land. Accordingly, a change in the ownership or tenancy of a non-conforming business or structure does not affect the right to continue the non-conforming use. The right is not terminated or destroyed by change in ownership of the property alone. So this gives credence to at least that we didn't do all of our homework when we made the changes in the LDR. We chose, when we did the LDR, to not use a consultant. When we did the comp plan, we had, here's a copy. Do you want a copy of these sites so you don't have to write them down?
Sure, that would be great, Mr. Palmer.
So we had, when we did the comp plan change, we had a consultant. Why is that? Well, the comp plan is a requirement placed on us to change. I think it's every 10 years if I recall. I'm old, I don't recall all the details. And the reason for that is that the law laws change, the state will change things. And then when those changes then have to propagate it, make it down to the cities, okay? A good example would be maybe the imposition of handicap access. That's a perfect example. Originally it wasn't considered, then it became a state law, and then it had to make sure it got filtered down into the city so they can incorporate it in their plans. But when we were doing that comp plan, we would have ideas of what we could do and couldn't do, and because these people had been doing this professionally, and they had to be aware of state statutes that we had no clue about, okay? We had no clue, and we also had Dr. Sloan there at times, most of the times, and so we had to, and they also had the experience of going into other cities and seeing what worked, what didn't work, what got challenged, and so that accumulative experience really did help us to write the comp plan. Now, when we got down to time to do the LDR, there was a lot of unusual circumstances that happened. I'm just going to kind of review it real quickly because it has a point that I want to make. Okay, a little background on the creation of the LDR 2022 and factors that played in this revision. And you'll, at the very end, I will make the point that actually, that had we properly vetted the changes in our LDR, possibly it would not have created this problem. However, I do have to defer that you guys have pointed out that something that I don't remember and was not made aware of by Cynthia, that they had made a use change. But it is important for going forward. So we had a little history of creating the LDR. 2002, 2019, 2020, I was a member and vice chair of the Planning Commission, and we, at that time, vetted several contractors who were specialists in rewriting an LDR. We picked one based on my recommendation, negotiated a price around $80K. LDR and the comp plans follow a state-mandated periodic review and rewrite, and we were close to a deadline. There are deadlines imposed on us. Prior, I was a part of the... Let me turn that off, please. Sorry about that.
No worries, Paul.
I was part of the overwrite of the comp plan. We had, again, I already talked, well, I jumped around there. We already talked about that part. Then we had a new mayor. Mayor Kelly took office April 2021. All but one city administrator personnel quit. I was replaced by Mark Rega as a planning commission chairman. And we were dealing with something that we were not expecting. There were financial uncertainties associated with how much money we have, what color was the money. The color of the money has an effect on how it can be spent. Okay, that's my best way to describe that. Well, anyway, part of the problems in the financials were the original system was not set up by an accountant. The chart of accounts, the general ledger was a mess, and it was all a PC-based system. And all of a sudden, we're taking information, and the procedures that were used to post on that old system were not being followed or were invalid. They didn't follow GAAP, General Accepted Accounting Practices. I reviewed all this personally to try to help them with the transition. So,
Where are we going?
where are we going? You'll hear in a second. So, in the transition to the new system, okay, bad info being put into new system that was being installed during COVID with a complete change, and then we had to change in staff. We now have a new administration, and we're looking at spending money. Where can we cut? We're afraid. We also had lost a third, I think, of our income from the toilet tax. Wasn't it roughly a third?
No.
20%?
I don't remember.
Well, but it was a significant amount. Prior to getting the ad valorem tax, we were basing our finances on the number of toilets. We called it the toilet tax. Just kind of a strange. But anyway, so there was some serious concerns about money. And to look at this $80,000, it was like, Well, and Mark Rega stepped up to the plate and says, I think we can do it. And we did the best job we could. You know, we did not have the expertise that these other people could bring, so we did make mistakes, okay? We didn't have time to research out all the various ins and outs. So we did the best job we could. We did save 80,000, but I believe these, did I give you a copy yet?
You gave me a copy of the sheet that has.
The case law?
That on it, yes, sir.
Yeah, the case law?
There are A, B, C, and D.
Yeah, right, that's it, okay. So that's the problem. So how does this fit into this whole current situation? Well, I was sort of thinking that had we been more careful with that clause of disbanding the grandfathering, had we done more research, then maybe this whole need for them to have applied would have fallen through. But again, you've explained something to me that I didn't remember or was unaware. Now, I do have one question though.
Well, let me
get my last question.
I'm not cutting you off, I'm just, because you said something, it bears a response right now. So in 2021, the reason that we did this is because Florida law 70.001 under private personal rights protection specifically identifies this situation. We wrote this rule regarding when you have a sale, if you've got a district like a low density residential area and it is all single family dwellings, item 2 specifically says that those protections go away. This is the state law, supremacy rule now. It says that you lose if, for example, for real property, anytime you've got a situation where you've got an adjacent land uses that are in opposition of the district, you can put that law in place. So I'll hand you this if you're interested.
No.
So ultimately, this is Florida state law, and of course, and this is based on home rule. Home rule does allow you the opportunity to go ahead and make your own special rules as long as you don't directly conflict with the state. So the rule you're talking about that maybe we shouldn't have, it was based on the actual private property rights protection. This was why 6.31 was written, because we asked for homeowners participation. They said if it's a low density residential area, we'd like it to be low density residential. So, and that's item 2 right in that 2021 Florida statutes. And that piece hasn't been updated.
Okay, now, we also understand how case law works, Dr. Sloan. When the state makes rules and then people challenge those rules and then you get case law overrules that particular clause, and these cases overrule them.
Wait just a minute. The statute may be interpreted by the court, but the statute that Mr. Rega is talking about from the 2021 statutes is long after the 2 cases that you have here.
Good point.
You have a 1985 case and you have a 2002 case. But again, from the sounds of what I'm hearing, it seems like we're missing the trees for the forest on this particular issue, in the sense that the 2012 land development regulations and the representations of the owner of, starting with the duplex, if you look at the sheet on the variance, it identifies a duplex, not even a triplex. And I'm going to a single family residence, and a variance is granted based upon that representation.
Correct.
And the owner has represented, so not to have to do a backflow prevention check, has represented to the owner, to the city, that they are a single family residence. All of that predates
Overrides
any
everything.
changes
I agree.
to the land
No
development
question.
regulations.
Okay, well, I said my piece.
Paul, thank you. We always learn something. Thank you. Are there anybody else that would like to, please?
Jeanette Howard, 1123 East Park Street. I think what didn't happen during the LDR change, and I would recommend it in the future, is what I'm hearing is that everybody was aware that you were meeting and having workshops, but what I would expect in the future is before you get to the final LDR, you come out with a summary of proposed changes. We're gonna eliminate the grandfather clause. We're gonna prevent you from parking your RVs in your driveway. That should have happened. A summary of proposed changes that goes out to the community, and then you say, does anybody have reservations about what we want to change? I think that would have been helpful.
That's a good, I agree with you, Jeanette, that's a good idea. What we did do, and it's short of what you just said, and I like what you just said a lot, I think that's a great idea, because there were a lot of changes. What we did do is we did invite the public to come and view the final piece for 3 weeks prior to the final adoption by the council members. So I don't think we ever did what you just said, where we say, okay, here's the new thing, and look at section 1, look at section 2, look at all the way through section 9, concurrency, whatever. These are the changes. What we did do is we said, here's the final document, please review it, and then let us know.
Unreasonable.
I like your idea a lot about, hey, let's point out what those changes are.
Gotcha.
When you piecemeal it, like recently we did with the recent changes, where you're only working on one component of it, it's easy to keep track. But when you do a mammoth job like we did, that's a good idea.
Okay.
For the future especially.
Thank you. And I am confused about Cynthia's case. The way I understand it is she had a prospective buyer who came into City Hall and was told, you'll get a variance, simple as pie.
Somebody said that?
Yeah.
I spoke with them, and simple as pie never came out of my mouth. A variance for a fence is impossible.
Okay, so I understood, okay, so maybe not simple as pie, that was my words.
It was
but
not simple,
okay.
and I told them it would not, I don't know if it would be approved. It is not up to planning, it is only up to council.
Okay, that's good. That's not the word on the street. But what I'm understanding now, having sat through the past 20 minutes, is there was no intention to give Cynthia the opportunity to have a variance. And I don't know if it's because of what Mr. Brannon said, because Mr. Brannon said, well, you went ahead and you changed the LDR, so I want you to change it back. But then Cynthia comes here and you say, well, you keep talking about the old LDR. Well, her variance has nothing to do with the old LDR. It has to do with the new LDR. And she paid $150 to get a variance.
Jeanette, it actually does, because what she was telling us is that the reason she was losing some rights was because of the new LDR.
Then she shouldn't have been, shouldn't have been given
that
a variance.
That is not true.
It was done before the new LDR.
Okay, so my question is, if she was already not allowed to get a variance because she was relying on the old LDR,
Well,
then why give her a variance? Please don't cut me off.
No.
Please, no. Let me finish.
But
Let me finish.
Okay.
You have a great way of interrupting people.
Okay,
A
I'm
great
sorry
way of
about that.
interrupting people, and I'm not going to let you do that to me.
Wait a minute
Okay.
now. He's the chair.
I know he's the chair.
He runs the meeting.
Okay,
so
okay.
He controls
Okay.
the speech at the podium.
Okay, go ahead
So let me
then.
just make sure you
I
understand.
just want it for all the people that get interrupted, Mark. We got you. We got you.
Well, I'm glad I'm gotten.
You got you.
So at the end of the day, what I was going to tell you is that the original concept here was flawed. It wasn't based on the concept that the LDRs had changed. It was because the new LDR certainly prevented it, but the concept was that it was the change that triggered it. That wasn't true at all. It was the furthest thing from true. And there were 3 or 4 things that mandated it. These guys here are supposed to call these things as the rules are. But I want to correct you on one thing. They have not been denied this variance.
I didn't hear the 7 questions.
Well, they have not been denied this variance, and I think they know that, but I want to make sure you know that.
I do not know that.
These people here are advisory people. What we do is we try and put together the technical information, and we go to council and say, this is what happened. Now it's up to them to make their decision. We're advisory, we're not governing. We're not the governing board. They've not been denied. They may not get an appropriate vote, they may get an appropriate vote. I don't know that yet, we haven't voted yet. But because there's still more people that probably want to speak, the final governing body is who determines whether or not these people get this variance.
We know that. I just think that the fact that you cut them off on question number 2 speaks volumes. It speaks volumes.
Jeanette, when
you have
somebody
no intention.
accuses you of doing something wrong, you have to respond right then and there. And what we were told in the write-up here, was that they had never known, they were never alerted. We have email chains that show they were alerted. So I can't let something like that go without retorting it. It's just wrong. If you're gonna speak, please be not you, anybody. If you're gonna speak, my goal is to be factual. And if you're telling me something I know isn't right, then maybe the dialogue beyond that is gonna just build on it, and it's senseless to go there. You have to stop it when it occurs. And I'm sorry you feel interrupted, but if anybody says anything that I believe is in error or wrong, I have to point it out immediately.
And you are the chairman. I have one other question. Does okay, so Mr. Kenny is going to build a shed and he gets permission, he gets a variance, or I get a variance, I get permission to do something. Is there any mechanism in place for you all to follow up on whether I actually did that? Or do you automatically assume that all the variances that you have granted have come to fruition?
We don't grant variances ourselves.
Well, the city council.
The city would be in charge of that.
So with Cynthia, so everybody in Parker that ever got a variance, you are absolutely 100% sure that they followed through on that variance?
I'm not. But if your point is that for some reason she was able to back up, that's not the point here. The point is that the variance was granted based on the information given to us. So the city had no belief structure to believe anything other than that.
Okay, and then my question actually was, is there I would recommend a follow-up. Okay, this body recommends to the city council that the variance be approved. The city council approved the variance. Maybe 6 months from now, a year from now, somebody follows up and says, did you act on that variance we granted you? That would be beneficial, right?
Is a variance,
I mean,
does
if
it
you
have
get-
a time that it runs out?
And it stays with the property, so
Right.
like the variance
Okay.
we had to sell over on Mr. Wildhaber's, it goes with the sale of the property. That sale could
Right.
take 15 years.
Right.
It has a variance on it.
Yeah,
it doesn't run out.
the
So-
variance does ride with the
Variance
property
right
for the
with
life of
and
it.
even
Right.
with the sale.
Yeah, and that makes good sense, because let's say that the Rosas did build their garage, and that garage was built, but it's a variance because of the distance to one of the side streets. It wouldn't make sense for that to run out, because then somebody would have made them tear it down. So the variance remains with the property as
Yeah.
long as the property is
Absolutely.
there.
And so it's not the city's responsibility to make sure the variance was carried out,
No.
but that the variance was granted, if it is granted, that it's granted. And so if now, the gentleman has the ability to build a shed that he wants to build, but it's not our job to police him,
Nope.
or the city's job to police if he builds that shed.
I promise you one last question. If I build something on my property, I get a permit, and that permit goes forward with my house, right? So the buyer of my house understands that I put a sprinkler system in. I got a permit, and it goes along with the house. There's nothing that a variance doesn't go along. How does the third buyer of Cynthia's house know that there was a variance?
In this particular case, the variance, they were actually given a letter, I believe, from City Hall. Is that right, that the variance was granted?
It's in the minutes that the variance are granted, then
Yeah.
we keep track of it with our new system.
Yeah.
There's a variance on the
Yeah,
property.
but in the case of like the gentleman who was just here a little earlier with the shed, that shed requires a permit. So EPCI will submit the permit, and then, they'll receive a letter from the city, and then there's inspections that go along with it to make sure that it's built to code. But variances do stay with the property forever. For example, the variance that was granted to Miss Rozo stays with the property at this point. So no
But-
matter who buys it,
So
that
where
variance
is that? Where is that? So I understand when the guy with the shed needs to get a permit, that goes along with the house. But a variance that does not require a permit, I don't see how it goes along with the house.
Well, it was the garage, yeah.
It would have
Yeah,
required a
the
permit
variance was
when
for
it was built.
But,
yeah.
but are there variances that don't require permits?
Oh, of course.
And how do they get translated to a future buyer?
The city tracks them, and the
Yeah.
buyer, in their due diligence, could contact the city
Okay,
and confirm whether or not there is a variance on the property.
Right, and what we all understand on the street is that when we buy houses, we don't come to City Hall. We don't come to City Hall when we buy a house, okay? I mean, that is highly unusual. So I would also recommend that, there is some sort of, because Cynthia was caught off guard by this variance that she applied for. Because it didn't require a permit and all that.
But once again, this had nothing to do with the new LDRs.
But that's-
It was the rules that were already in place, and there are legal requirements out there that let the buyer beware. If you buy a parcel of land, let's say in a low-density residential area, and you want to build a high-rise, you can't do it. And if they bought it for the purpose of building a high-rise there, you would be prevented from doing it because that district doesn't allow it. So you do have to do some due diligence to determine what's acceptable, what can be built, how are they built. Municipalities do have the option, based on home rule, to make sure that their city is built in the vision that they wish. It's that simple.
Got it.
Generally, those things are designed to protect people, though. In this particular case, the concept is that's a low-density residential area, and we wish to keep it that way.
I said it was my last question, but let me ask one more question. If she had not gotten her variance in 2021, would you have approved her variance?
It's speculation.
That's something to sleep on. Would you have approved it? Because
It's
all she wants to
speculation.
do is sell her house. She just wants to get out of this town and sell her house. That's all.
Thanks for your comments, Jeanette.
But we'll lose economic hardship on us.
So, let me,
I'd like to interject.
yes, ma'am, one other thing, though, before Ms. Rosso.
I can change mine to a single family if I need to.
Jamie, I understand that there were some letters that were, some people, so let's do this. Let's hear from other public members. We heard from you and George, and then you can come back, okay? But I want to hear anybody else that had some comments as well.
Can we read the letters, or do you want to read the letters first?
I'd like to hear the letters now.
Sure.
So it's my understanding that these are individuals that could not be at the meeting, and they wanted to convey their opinions.
Correct,
Okay?
yes.
Are you allowed to share their addresses with us? Mr. Sloan?
They put them on the letters.
Just as though they were speaking, whatever their name and address
Okay.
is, just as though they were standing at the podium.
This
Very
is
good.
David McDonald, 1446 Parkway Drive.
Okay.
It's my opinion that the request should be denied. A major attraction to this neighborhood is the single-family homes and the low-density population it provides. I assume the owner of 1440 Dover Road will no longer be living there, and that they are no longer concerned about the welfare of the community. They would make it a commercial enterprise to benefit them at the expense of the rest of the community. I'm against the approval of the variance. David McDonald.
Thank you for that.
Okay, and the second one is Gerald and Diane Heikkinen of 1438 Dover Road, 1438, for their next door.
The neighbor?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay.
Dear Council Commission members, I am Gerald Heikkinen and I live at 1438 Dover Road. I am sorry that I cannot attend in person tonight due to travel commitments out of state with my Air Force employer. I received a notification from the city clerk that a variance has been requested to the comprehensive plan and land development regulations for the neighboring property at 1440 Dover Road. I kindly ask you to uphold the land development regulations as written and keep the land use of the property as a single-family home, not a multifamily use. Although there are bound to be differences of opinion on the matter, I politely request you to continue your support and keep your determination to maintain the character of all our low-density residential areas, single-family residential areas, within the entire city of Parker. I believe it's meaningful and positive step in developing the city as we want it to be in the future. As a permanent resident and citizen of over 24 years, I am invested in the long term as we try to keep the kind of community and surroundings that are laid out in the comprehensive plan.
What was that gentleman's name again?
It's, I'm not sure.
Heikkinen.
Please don't approve this variance request. Respectfully, Gerald Heikkinen and Diane Heikkinen. Those are the only two letters that were turned in.
Thank you.
But,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Libby
Jan.
had a letter. Do you want me to?
I always
read
say
your letter?
Heineken, but it's not.
Oh,
No,
okay.
they've all gotten
You
his
know,
letter.
you know that?
They
fellow?
got you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, very good. Yes, ma'am.
So I based my variance request on what the professional planning technician told me it was. It was based on the, you know, I cut and paste the email from Jamie telling me what I needed to write a variance for. And I feel kind of bamboozled, like now you're switching it, saying it's not that, it's this. So I would have appreciated some counseling from her, like, oh, well, you know, it's also based on these two other documents that you submitted. And these educate me, because it's also my understanding that the gentleman that applied for the 1039 East Park variance, he had help from her. She wrote, or helped him write the variance. I was on my own. I thought I did good legal research on what she told me. The planning commission or planning technician told me what I was applying for. And now you're saying it's not based on the 2022
Did you hear what she
LDR.
just said?
No.
You didn't ask me for any help. He came in and asked me to actually write it for him because he had difficulty writing. I've never heard from you.
Is-
Is he
Is that allowed?
disabled or something?
That's
Well-
tipping the hands, isn't it? Well then, oh, okay,
Well,
so then you.
Ms. Rosa, everything's not
But if she-
nefarious.
okay, but if
he's-
she
if he's
emails
a
me and
gentleman that
tells
doesn't
me-
have the ability to write or something like that, and she's helping him, she's using his words to write it down, are you opposed to that?
Yes, I am.
You're opposed to somebody helping a
Yes,
citizen?
I feel like she knows the way to get things approved. She's on the inside. And she told me that this is what my variance should be based on. In an email, it was based on whatever the section 6-3.1, number 6. And I focused on that.
Yep.
And,
Mr. Sloan, should we ask Ms. Heinrichs if she used her words or the gentleman's?
Well, she can speak
She's
after
helping.
Ms.
Help
Rosa
me.
speaks.
This was my focus. She's the professional staff that said, this is what your variance needs to be written, variance application needs to be written for this. And then I get here and you're telling me now it has nothing to do with the 2022 LDRs. So my
Ms. Rosa,
question is,
you're
wait,
the one who said that it was the change in the LDRs that knocked you out of the ballpark here. Those aren't our words, are those your words?
I was basing it on
Aren't
what
you
she
the one who
said I
said
needed to sell my
that it was the
property.
change in the LDRs
For
that
2022?
caused you to not be able to sell it as a multifamily dwelling?
Yeah.
Okay, that's wrong. It was the old ones.
Well, she should
And the
have
new
told
ones,
me that.
she's not a mind reader. She
She's a
just
planning
testified.
technician. She represents the
She just
city.
testified that
She
you
told
didn't
me.
ask for any help. Is that true or not?
I asked her.
Did you ask her for any help?
Yes, I did ask her. This is what the buyer said they came in for.
Did you ask her to help you
I didn't
navigate
think I was
that
allowed to
language?
ask for help.
Okay, so you
That
didn't
would-
ask
that
her
would
for
tip
help.
the scales.
You didn't ask
But
her for help.
She is a professional
Ms.
and on
Rosso,
staff.
it's getting argumentative because
I-
you're taking it that way. And
I'm just
it's a
trying-
shame,
it-
because this is just baloney.
Wait, let me
Listen,
ju-
at the end of the day, we're gonna advise whatever we advise.
But you carry
can
a lot
bring
of
this
weight
to the
with
council
city,
members.
With the city council. Let me just ask, should I have asked for a variance to get my use restored? Is that because I asked for the wrong thing based on what your planning technician told me to do?
She didn't know that. The sunshine rules prevent all of us from talking.
She's a professional planning person on
We
staff.
can't
If
talk, but much of what happened here happened because these people went home, they brought out the rules, they looked at the state, they looked at the county, they looked at the LDRs that we have here, and they came to these conclusions independently. The first time that they're being shared is right here in front of you guys. She didn't have the benefit of that information because we didn't share it with her. She sent the agenda out.
You asked, who researched all this? Who found my old documents, my variance application?
They send all the documents to all of the members
Okay,
for us for
the planning
consideration.
technician, so she
No.
was aware.
No, the
No.
city clerk does,
did
the
it.
planning person does, everybody
Okay, well,
does.
she's a planning person on staff. And
But
all
you're
of-
making an accusation that she did something wrong because she didn't help you, and you just testified you didn't ask her for any help. So what am I supposed to think of you?
No, excuse me.
Excuse me, you
Well,
just
let's
accused her
hear
of
it.
something
This is
wrong.
This is digressing. You
It's
need
not a
to
matter of help, but
stay
I
focused.
did. I emailed her and I said, this is what I was told that I needed to do. And then she wrote me and said, yes, your variance needs to be based on this LDR. So that's what I focused on.
Let me take you for a minute. Is there anything we can do?
George, there absolutely is. Again, we are not the governing board. The
I get
governing
that part.
board
I get that
is
part.
next week.
Right.
I recommend you reconsider your variance and
We
go
don't
ahead.
want the variance, I mean, you know that, because.
Well,
we
I
messed it
certainly
up.
wouldn't go to them and tell them that the reason that you're being violated is because of the new LDRs, because that's flat out wrong,
Okay.
okay? I would probably just go ahead and think it through, read through that section, go to the governing board and ask them for their approval, because all we're gonna do is listen to anybody else here who has any comments about your property, and then we've got a few other things on the agenda, and then we're gonna go from there.
Okay, because I also told you, it's, that property, that particular property is a little strange because of the way the three units don't talk to each other. So let's say if they talk to each other, maybe you can make a nice big ranch out of it or something, but you can't even do that. And that's why we're trying to get an architect to say, okay, can we have any choices here? How do we increase the space? So maybe we can keep it as a one apartment downstairs, then we'll live upstairs or whatever.
Understood.
And that's how the variance thing all came out, that 8 inches or whatever the heck it was based on that.
Yeah.
But we ended up, and you know some of the history, right? We're leaving.
Well,
Question is,
and
how
at
do we
least,
minimize this, right?
Yeah.
Without,
well, and we do have to take into consideration, I mean, you guys had a direct neighbor who took the time to write a letter who said he'd be opposed to it because it may harm his property. I mean, we have to take that into consideration.
right, I
We
mean,
had
there's
another
nothing I
neighbor
can do
who brought
about
up a really
what-
good
what
point and
neighbors will
said,
say, right?
and said something to the effect of, if it's allowed to go through, what do you guys care? It's just about, you guys are moving on, and that's fine, I get that, but
Right.
that's their concern,
Right.
okay? So all of those things have got to be
But
taken into
theoretically, that would be a
consideration.
concern, to be honest. If any of the other triplexes or duplexes or quadplexes or whatever, you know, just one complaint and two complaints, does that make the rule change or whatever?
Only the
it's-
council will be able to
No,
tell
I
that.
get it,
I mean,
I get
our
it, I
goal
get
is to collect the facts, and the facts as we were giving
Right.
them was, and again, the accusation was that it was the new LDRs that prevented you from doing that, and that was an easy one to pretty much come to the
To knock it
conclusion that
down.
even the
So
old ones
we're gonna go back to
would have
the
done
old
the same thing.
LDRs.
Can we get a
Right.
variance on the old LDRs about restoring the use of that property? And get a variance on that?
I-
Because that's not the way we were directed, but maybe that's what we
I
need
think
to do.
I think what you should do is, you should go before the council members, and ultimately, tell them your story.
Okay. But then what happens? Let us say that they accept the story, then what happens?
Well, then they
They're
approved
the
it.
ones who vote. They
Okay.
just make a recommendation.
They're the governing,
Okay.
they're actually the lawmakers for the city.
Okay. Alright.
Do we need to make a recommendation?
I'd like to speak first, please.
Yes, please.
Then I have a question for you.
Thank you, I know it's been a long night.
That's
Pat
okay.
Kosick, 1344 Stratford. I'd like to take a step back because it's obviously become very heated. We're very passionate about our homes and our community and all of that. But I'm sitting here, obviously Cynthia and George and I are friends. You like it, you don't like it, I don't care who your friends are. But I'm looking at what the Planning Commission is doing and how they're evaluating variances. It wasn't too long ago, and please don't time me, I'll be brief. Thank you, Jamie. I figured you would. I'll be as brief as I can, much briefer than he is. oh, he left. Wasn't too long ago that a property owner, someone who bought some property, came into the planning commission. You gentlemen were not here, and he asked for a variance to build a commercial building. And despite, and I don't have this 100% committed to memory, but it's on video, despite Mr. Sloan saying, do we need to read the variance questions? Should we read the questions? The commission didn't ask the questions. They weren't read. They weren't read to the audience. They were answered, I'm trying to remember because there's been a couple of these. One of them, the way that the questions are written, you have to answer all yes in order to pass the variance test. And the first time the applicant didn't write yes. He wrote yes and no. He answered them honestly, frankly, that it wasn't a hardship. But this is what he wanted. So we didn't hear the variance questions. We didn't hear the answers. And the variance was granted. We had another situation where another variance, a land use change was made. And again, variance test was not administered. But yet it was granted. And we went from changing residential, low density residential lots to commercial, not MU1, MU2, to commercial. So we went like 2 stages up. And then we approved someone to run a business despite the fact that they didn't comply with the new ordinance that was created that changed the LDR, that allowed our seaside community to have people that could make birdhouses.
Pat, do me a favor, because I do want to look into it.
Okay.
Tell me
I'm not sure with Mr. Sloan.
I'm not able to, what I'm hearing is we made some mistakes.
Okay,
But I do want to look into it because that's just who I am.
Okay.
So.
And well, I have one more.
Yeah, but I need to go back.
Mr. Santora?
Santora, okay.
There was a gentleman that came in, he lives next to Sandy Gorman's house. Lynn. Mr. Lynn, with his garage that he put on the front part of the property, when he has this huge lot that he could have done.
I know about that one.
And then there is also a fourth one, and I cannot remember who it is, but I will get it for you.
Please
and
do.
I will send you an email.
Well, there were unique circumstances, at least in the Lynn situation.
Really?
Yes, ma'am. Do you remember that was a 60-foot?
But again, that's the rule. The rule, regardless of how that happened,
Except
I think
sometimes
Mr.
when
Sloan,
the rules are in place, you have to question the rule to find out why it was there, if it was a mistake.
Okay. Mr. Sloan questioned it, and I believe Stacy was still here at that time. And Ms. Galbraith said she was opposed to granting the variance, and she said, if we're going to do this, then let's change the plat. Let's look at all the other roads in Parker. I think we agreed that there was only 2 that have a 60-foot setback, and let's change them. Rather than just say, oh yeah, you can go ahead and ignore the rule. If the rule is wrong, let's change the rule. That never happened. So again, it seems to be that we're not consistent, and it feels unfair. So I think when you hear people that are frustrated, that maybe become argumentative or the emotions get involved, it's because many of us have sat here at these meetings and seen this happen with the council, with the planning commission, and there's one other thing that I wanted to bring up. Please forgive me. Oh, back to the planning commission meetings where the LDRs were reviewed. I went to some of those meetings. Jeanette brought up some good suggestions. I'd like to bring up one too, and this is something that, again, from as in part of my previous life, we wrote standards for scuba diving. If we had to change those standards, which we did, we looked at them every single year, we would do what's called a red line. I know Mr. Sloan knows how to do that because I've seen some of his work. That wasn't done. When we, just one moment,
I believe it was.
For the LDRs.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Where is it?
Well, that's the 3 weeks. So, because I got one of those and I got them in the same electronic version. The original version was redlined with the new version. That was the 3-week time
I've never
frame.
seen it.
Well,
Never even knew that it was available. But when we came to the
But
planning commission meeting,
it was
we
on
were
the
not
website.
We were not given the existing LDRs to look for, or to look at. I mean, I sat here, and you guys are up here, you're reading the clauses, you're reading the sections. Okay, what do you guys think? What do you think? We don't even know what you're talking about. And I remember, not so much at the LDRs, but there was something else that I asked Mr. Sloan, how am I supposed to get this? I have to know to contact the city clerk to say, hey, I want this, and forgive me, I don't remember what it was. It wasn't the LDRs. But I think we need to enhance our communication, and I really think we should be consistent. I mean, there are at least 4 examples. 3, I can give you the names.
Yeah.
But the fourth one, I'll have to research it, where we didn't go through all the hoops. We didn't stand up here and challenge someone's answer to the question. We had one gentleman who even answered them incorrectly. And we told him, I believe someone said, you need to answer them all yes. That was told to him. Really? You know, that's not fair. It's unfortunate that it's come to this. And again, I mean, we all have to get along. You and I had a conversation just last week. We all want the same thing for the
Good
city.
philosophical
Oh,
conversation.
and one other thing too, with Mr. Brannon and Mr. Libby. I mean, I live one lot over from Mr. Brannon's duplex, one of your duplexes over on Stratford. I live right there. When I saw that, I thought the same thing. What is he gonna do with his building? What's gonna happen with the quadplex that's over there across from Stacy's house? I don't know where the others are that are within Parker, but what's gonna happen to those? Mr. Libby made a great presentation. I haven't seen the petition. I don't know what he's talking about, but he said, hey, we've got a petition for you to look at. You were so accommodating and kind and said, you know, we'll look at that. So we're going to consider it after they lose a sale, or after they decide to do whatever.
I think we have to
and
revisit
again,
it, but come back to it. It's not the current regulation that is the problem. Once again, the original accusation was that the new regulations prevented them from selling the house.
Okay, I don't think it's an accusation. I think it's
Oh,
an
it was,
understanding.
it was,
It's a
it was,
misunderstanding.
the accusation was there
Well-
that we had written an LDR that was not able to allow them to sell their property. It's the old one that did that. And the new one is a little bit more stringent, but it followed suit.
But yet we're willing to talk about it.
You know what, if you just wanna use my words to hammer with, that's okay.
No,
At the
I'm
end
not
of the
trying
day,
to do that, Mr. Rega.
Listen,
I'm
listen,
really not.
listen. Both Mr. Libby has always been respectful and kind, and so have you.
Yes.
At the end of the day, we are gonna look at it. Maybe we could make it a little bit better. We're not robots. We're not perfect.
I agree.
And at the end of the day, and thank you for pointing that out, I heard somebody laugh, and that's probably an appropriate thing, but at the end of the day, we're humans, and we do the best we can, and we come to the council and we make the recommendations based on a very, very specific set of circumstances where we have to explain them. Like I said, when we went through these 19 different meetings.
Oh, there were a lot of
8 of
meetings.
those being 2.5 to
Absolutely.
3 hours in duration.
Yes.
The councils would say, why should we change it? Why are we doing that? And then we would bring things to them like, okay, these are Florida, rights protection. We did a lot of research. So, yeah, maybe we made some mistakes, but we've got 1,000 hours into trying to get it right. So at
Okay.
the end of the day, did we make a couple of mistakes? Maybe.
Right.
I don't think this one was a mistake as of yet.
Okay.
Because so far, it looks like we're just following through with what the intent for that particular district was.
Okay, and I recognize all that, and I respect and appreciate all the work that you and the council members did, and the 2 previous commissioners that sat here. But I still go back to fair application of the rules and the laws.
I agree with that.
One more
I agree.
question. Mr. Johnson, who I think is left, he came in, if I'm not mistaken, the last planning commission and asked for a variance on a single family or low density residential to make it into a 5 duplex parcel. He wants to subdivide and he wants to put duplexes up there. I know it hasn't been decided. However, this was interesting. I thought this was an interesting perspective and sort of goes to something that Jeanette was saying. So initially his thought is to put 5 duplexes in there. Let's say that the variance is granted, but then he thinks, you know what, I can actually make more money if I put 3 single family homes on there. So he decides to do that. He comes in and he gets a lot split. Are you then gonna say, no, sorry, you can't do that,
I'm not gonna answer a speculation like
But
that,
I ju-
or
again, food for
hypothetical,
thought.
hypothetical.
It will
But-
basically become MU1, and now he wants to make it low-density residential. Can he do that? I'm sure he can, because MU1 will allow the lesser, if you will, the first designation LDR. MU1 accepts MU1 plus anything that an LDR accepts. But again, the process should be equally applied, and I think people should have
I think it's hard
the
to
option.
do that though, Pat, because there are unique circumstances. For example, you brought up Mr. Lynn. Mr. Lynn lives basically in our neighborhood.
Yes.
And we didn't just show up one day and decide that we were gonna make a decision. We went to Tony and said, Tony, why does that road have a 60-foot right-of-way? He said, I don't know. We checked with the state. We said, why does that road have a 60-foot right-of-way? It's the same road we've got.
Right.
And they all said, we don't know.
Right.
So then we came back to the planning commission and said, everything else has got a 50-foot right-of-way, and this guy's compliant if it's 50 foot. That was a unique circumstance. So I know you hit us with it, but that's the research that went into it. We couldn't figure out why it was 60. We said to Tony, are there fiber optics in the road? Are there bigger sewer lines? Are there water lines? He said, no, it's everything you've got. At the end of the day, we couldn't determine why the state made it that way.
Okay.
So here's the good news. Municipalities can't change the 60 foot, but what we can do is we can provide a variance based on the setback.
Okay.
So that's what we did. We
Okay.
tried to correct a wrong.
Okay.
So it wasn't just an inapplication of the law or a wrong application of the law. We did the research, couldn't figure out why it was that way, and then we tried to make it right.
Okay. Parting question, rhetorical, because I will not expect an answer, and I know it's getting late and we have places to go. I wonder what the unique circumstances were for Mr. Santora's property. Thank you.
Well, that's a good one.
Can I ask a question?
Please, it's still an open hearing.
Sooner or later, CJ.
I'm curious about the definition of single use.
Single-family dwellings,
Single-family
yes, sir.
dwelling, right. So can I rent to one family all 3 units, or 2 of them? Or
Absolutely.
Right
So-
now,
yeah.
it is a single family.
Okay, so as
use.
long as it's one family,
Yes.
we can rent 1, 2, or 3 of them, or whatever, right?
You rent
As
the
units, separate
entire
units.
structure, which is now a single family
Okay.
use.
Absolutely. It's, like I say, it's the multiple family thing that was the use issue.
Right, right. Okay,
It's,
so-
but Mr. Sloan's, you heard him.
Yeah,
I don't need to repeat what he said. Is there anybody else that had, yes, please, CJ, how are you, sir?
I'm good. CJ Patterson, 615 Arrow Street. I'm using my actual home address because I'm asking an assistant, not as my other position, which is a volunteer for the city. So I want to just lay that out right away. One thing that was brought up was the backflow. And those are 2 different times because I'm trying to, again, I've had a lot of questions and going through everything. I'm trying to get all my answers correctly. So you said you have the letter that she said she's making it a multifamily. So if her variance was in April of 21, was that backflow letter,
The backflow letter,
was
I
that
have-
within the
went out
same year?
actually, the city has a copy of the letter.
But that's what I'm saying is if it was in the same year, then
No,
where
I think the
she's saying,
backflow letter was 22, wasn't it? Early
Okay.
22?
variance was December of 20.
Yeah, the variance was December of 21.
and then the backflow letter, because I remember seeing the
January.
backflow letter because somebody asked me. So when that was sent out, she then requested and said, hey, it's going to be a single family. This is what we're doing going forward. Okay, so I'm not trying to be mean and I'm not trying to throw anybody
That's
under the
all
bus,
right.
but
That's all
one of the things that Mr. Solone said and came up with was, hey, she said at the backflow. So I was just trying to throw the dates out there so that way, if it was, the variance was December, and again, sorry about the dates, it's been a long night. If the variance was December and this backflow letter was in January or March, then obviously she was still working with the architect, same architect. But if the variance and the backflow were 2 years apart,
No,
at what point can we?
They were about two or 3 months
Okay.
apart.
Okay, so before we threw both of those at her, that was just the one thing of, before we separated those and used them as 2 different reasons, that would be the one thing.
Well, it was
hey,
just further
that happened at the
confirmation
same
that the
time.
use had changed.
Correct.
The variant to date was December 28th of 2021. The letter was January 18th of 2022.
There
Okay.
you go.
So they were close by, so that way it was still under the same thing. Okay.
And under the assumption that we've done this, so we're gonna do a single family, and
Yeah.
I mean, you know, acting under that.
So it was around the same time. It wasn't separated and
Yep.
plans didn't change. And then something-
Any other individuals like to make comment, please? Mr. Sloan, I
Close
have
the
to.
public hearing and then seek a motion. Mr.
Very good.
But-
Okay,
I have one
Chairman
question.
Regan?
please do.
I just have a question though. What variance should they apply for? Because according to the new LDR, if she sells it, it loses its non-conforming status. According to the older LDR, she lost her
Non-conforming status
She's a
then.
non-conforming status, or she's a single-family home. So a variance is needed if a new buyer buys this and wants to rent it as a triplex.
Or duplex, well, and I wonder about triplex when she submitted an application in
That says
21 that says it's a duplex. And the property appraiser carries it as a duplex. So, that being said, the variance, as I understand it, is she is asking to allow her to go back to a duplex or triplex, a multifamily situation from the current status of the house as a single-family resident.
But
Now,
at the transfer of a sale, it would lose its non-conforming status again, according to the new
well,
LDR.
it's already lost.
But if you allow her to get rid of the first, void the first variance, or.
Well, no, this commission is not voiding what the council did.
Right, but I'm saying if the council, if when she goes to council, because she goes to council either way, at the next meeting, whether
Right.
they recommend it or not, she's gonna go to council. So can council say, we can get rid of the first variance and then allow a variance?
Council can confirm that the variance that they granted was based upon the single-family residence representation, and that if she wants something other than that, she would be submitting an application to change the use in a low-density residential district.
See, but I think Jamie's question is, if they did that and the council said, okay, fine, now we can have the 3-unit, then when someone purchases it, because of the new LDR, it's back to being a single family. It is not. You see? It's kind of like a, I don't know, catch-22, if you will. This might be a catch-44. I don't know where we're going.
The variance remains with the property.
So
Right.
The variance is based upon a single-family residence that has already been granted.
So she's better off that it's a single-family residence.
If she
and then
wants a different standing of the use of the property, and that's her variance request now, which it sounds like it is, then she comes back to the city and they would have to void the last variance and grant her this variance.
Very good.
Can she?
Kyle, did you have something?
Yeah, so my question is, and I just want to reiterate and also to make sure I understand correctly, it has not been used as a multi-unit for over 180 days.
Right.
And it is currently designated as a single-family dwelling.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
When you say designated by whom?
The variance that was approved.
Yeah.
Okay, even though the property appraiser does say duplex. And they're
Which-
missing a bedroom and a bathroom. They're showing 2 2s. And it's 3 3s.
Yeah, to be honest, the tax,
Or 4
can I?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
tax
the
collector's
tax
office.
assessor misses a lot of things. It
Yeah.
doesn't have all the square footage,
Yes.
it's got a lot of stuff. And it's been a triplex, I mean, Jesus, I mean, whoever lives in that neighborhood knows it's been a triplex forever and ever. It didn't just appear from a duplex to a triplex or whatever. So let me understand something. Do we need to have another permit? Like,
Variance.
another variance, whatever,
You mean to go to
Right.
council next week?
right, I don't know the right terms or whatever, like, we filed today with, this variance or whatever, we got a permit for the variance, right? Do we need another one, or,
No, you're seeking a variance under the current LDR that would allow you to sell it as and again, I'm just looking at what the city was presented. The representation was a duplex, you're saying a triplex. But the city would have to void the last
Right,
variance.
right.
They would have to, in essence, grant you a variance on the current LDR provision. And as a part of that, they would have to grant a variance on the old LDR about your abandonment of the property as a multifamily property and as the abandonment of a single-family residence.
Right.
So
But does that
they'd have
require?
to undo all that
Right.
and grant you a variance to
Right.
allow you to transfer
Right.
it.
But does that require, let's say, me just talking? Or do we have to sign some paperwork and file some paperwork with it, like we did for today? That's the question. Because
Well,
it sounds
I'd
like.
have to go back and review your request. I think it's gonna get to the council next week, as I'm understanding from staff. The council will consider the entirety of what you're asking for. If you're asking, do you have to submit a second variance request after the first one? I don't know that this group is looking for you to do that, no.
Okay, so we just have to tell them our story, and they choose one way or the other, but we
Yeah,
don't
they
need any
need,
additional
the council would have to
paperwork.
basically undo and
The variance,
here
whatever.
what you told them back in 21 and what was told to the city in 22 and what has occurred since you purchased the property.
But you do understand, it was a hypothetical. If we were to do this, we wanted to make sure that all the ducks in a row were lined up or whatever, that we weren't gonna have any other issues. That's why the variance was not because we were ready to do it, we were thinking about it.
Okay.
Decided not to,
Well,
whatever, but that's it.
as I say.
Got it, okay.
The
So-
variance was granted based upon your
Sure,
representation.
so no other paperwork is required for next week's meeting.
I think Mr. Sloan's given us the
Okay.
answer. I think
Okay,
I would
fair
go
enough.
to the council next week,
Yeah, that's
George.
fine.
Tell them your story.
Yeah.
Tell them that you learned some things here that you maybe hadn't thought of before, and,
Okay.
but you're still wishing, to be able to,
Okay.
rent it or sell it as a multifamily.
Okay.
If that's where you still wanna be, and that's what the variance
Well, I
is.
mean-
And I think Mr. Sloan identifies.
We
the-
have it under contract, theoretically.
Yeah.
Theoretically, okay.
Very
Okay,
good.
thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Anybody
Chair,
else?
you wanna close the public
Okay.
and then bring it up to the
Very
planning
good.
commission? for
I'm gonna close the
discussion.
public hearing, and I think we still have to take a vote and send that.
There would need to be a motion and a second and a vote
I'd
on.
like to say something first.
Sure.
I'm probably gonna be the low man on the totem pole after I say this, but
Go for it.
I moved out to Donaldson Point about 35 years ago. There's a duplex down at the end of Cedar. My house used to be was built as a triplex. It was used as a duplex until right before we bought it. I just found out because I've used it as a single-family home, can't go back. I can't rent it out. I just found that out 2 hours ago. There's 2 other houses on Sunset, 3 houses down and 4 houses down that were apparently built as duplexes. There's a Razzo's house that's a triplex, the quadplex, your duplex over there. There's a house around on Sharon that, as long as we've been there, it's been a single family resident, but you can tell it was a duplex because it has 2 front doors. You know, it's just part of the life back there. And I don't see anything wrong with what they're asking. They bought it as a triplex, they wanna keep it as a triplex, and I get it, I'm conflicted with what we have on paper and what I think here.
Can I speak? They converted it to a single-family home. Once you convert it to a single-family home, it's considered a single-family home, and you can't take a single-family home and convert it back.
We didn't convert ours.
No, I'm talking about theirs, not
Yeah.
yours.
Yeah.
There's been no construction.
Chair, we're gonna lose.
You-
It's still
Yeah,
3
It
separate
doesn't matter, it was passed.
by the variance.
Yes,
Okay.
variance.
Point of
So it's
order,
just
guys.
passed.
I think I think the issue
Yeah.
there is understood. What we're doing is we're continuing to conflict structure versus use. Those
Right.
are 2 very different things.
Right.
And that's, and the LDR speaks to each of them. You know, an easy way to think of it, if you need to kind of correlate it in your brain, is if you have a ice cream parlor and you want to turn it into a bar, that's a different use, even though the ice cream parlor still had sinks and refrigerators and everything. So your business license would change the use. It's the same thing here. Single family, multifamily, those are different uses. But anyway, so appreciate that, Terry. You always offer an interesting perspective. What I'm looking for is a motion either way. Either in opposition. You remember you have three options here. You can approve with conditions, or you can deny.
Well, recommend.
Or
Recommend.
Well, you can recommend to approve, you can recommend to approve with conditions, or recommend to deny.
If nobody else is gonna speak, I'll make a motion that we recommend to the council that they grant the variance based on the questions.
I'll ask for a second. If I don't get a second, then it dies in the vine. You want me to leave it out hanging there for another few minutes?
No.
Very good. All right, I'll ask for another motion then, please. At this point, I think what we do is we say the planning commission is conflicted, and are we forced to have a vote?
The council really looks to you all to make a recommendation
I'll ask,
one way or the other.
I'll ask you to dig deep then, and consider a motion for, again, either approval with conditions. And the approval with conditions can be that the council review it in its entirety for what it is, or it can be something different than that.
I'm not sure what that was. What?
That the council review.
Yeah, I'm not sure what
the
you just
council
said. The
The
condition
approval
would
with
be that it's
conditions.
like something like that they paint it green or something. That's a condition.
Well, it
But-
would be, maybe it would be exactly as you'd said, Mr. Sloan, that they would have to extract the
Well, that would be the
original.
recommendation of approval, and that would necessarily require the unraveling of all the statements that have been made since 2021.
Very good.
Or to recommend disapproval of the variance.
I make a motion to recommend disapproval of variance based on it has not been used for 180 days, and based on that it was cited now or changed to a single family dwelling, and based on the letters from other neighbors that said that they would not like that as a multi-family dwelling.
So I have a motion to disapprove based on the LDRs and the public input. Do I have a second? Interesting. And very unique.
Well, we're conflicted.
I know I'm conflicted. I didn't know everybody
conflicted
else
too.
was
This
conflicted.
is a very hard.
It's a hard one. It's a difficult one.
I'll second Kyle's motion, and I'll tell you why. When we sat down and did the LDR, I was kind of new to all of it, and I took this book home and I studied it and I studied it and I studied it, trying to understand everything. Tonight we have been kind of accused of not being smart enough to do it, and we did have a guide because you started with the LDR, what, like 85 or something they started out here? You've been around a little bit,
Mr. Sloan
okay?
wrote the original one for us.
So,
feel like the
that
principal-
being said, we had fairly decent guidance, not to call you out there, but just saying. And I feel like this was done because we, as a planning commission, have to look at everything citywide, not just Donaldson Point, not just East Side, which is my side of town, not just West Side, which is out there, towards Tyndall Air Force Base. It is the entirety of the city and how these things impact. And when you get down there into Donaldson Point, it is a ton of little, single family homes. And I know there's some duplexes down there. There's some over in my area. But I also feel that when we did the LDR, there were quite a few people that spoke about kind of wanting to slow that down, keep that, you know, in certain areas and not down in that area. Back in the 50s, you could do whatever, because that used to be an old turpentine farm down there. They did all kinds of stuff down there. But you've got, you know, multi-million-dollar homes down there, or at least $500,000 to $1 million homes down there. You know, we have to stop and think about how we affect everyone, not just one or two people. And as much as I think, you know, it's your property and you should be able to use your property and those kind of things, I also think that that is one of the biggest things that you say all the time is we have to think about what harm we do to our neighbors.
You hit the nail on the head for me too. That's exactly
So
what
I have a first, I have a second. Motion on the floor is denial because of the detail within the LDRs and also some of the public comment. Madam Clerk, will you take a vote, please?
Mr. Hall? If I would like to recuse myself from the vote, did I say that?
Yes.
You have to have a financial interest or some pecuniary interest that you would have.
So the reason is the perception that because I have a property 3 houses down that I can't be impartial to this vote. So I'd like to recuse myself from the vote just to be fair.
You'll have to fill out a form, by the way.
Okay. Ms. Hutto?
Yeah.
Mr. Merritt?
Yes.
Mr. Stryker?
No.
Chairman Riga?
Recuse. I'll fill the form out.
Now, that doesn't mean that it doesn't go to city council.
Right, it goes.
Yeah, they can still look at it.
They can still look at it, they can still do on their end of things. We have had our say.
Mr. Chair, I would suggest given the time.
And we still have the
maybe
rest of the
last
meeting.
2 items to
Right.
Yeah,
Great.
that's very good. We had 2 additional items, and thank you
Still
for
meeting.
everybody's input.
Still meeting.
Yeah, we're still meeting. We had 2 items remaining on the list, but it's quite late due to all of the activities. So what I'm going to do is I'll just pass them to the next one. What I'll ask you to do is, the clerk had sent out some information regarding the federal laws on billboards, the state laws on billboards, and some of the local laws on billboards, and the arrangement that the state had with the feds. So just make sure you're aware of that, because Mr. Sloan has asked the council members to provide us with directions in terms of what to do. Currently, there is a 6-month moratorium on billboards being built, and we need to determine if we're going to extend the moratorium or eliminate billboards entirely, or ratchet down the laws that are there, or something else. I think you'll find what the state has said very interesting, and also the feds have said. They call it their beautification, America beautification measures, because they obviously think billboards are ugly, and so does the state. So they actually prevent them from being in certain areas of the state, particularly those areas. As a matter of fact, there are 4 states that have completely eliminated them. And I think, if I remember, they're Alaska, Maine, 2 more up in the northeast there. I can't remember the other 2. Maybe Hawaii is on there as well.
Beautiful states.
There's Alaska, Maine, Hawaii, and 1 more. I think it's Vermont.
We couldn't do that. Nobody know how to get to Disney.
There you go. There you go. There you
Just
go.
saying.
Now you
I mean,
can
just
have-
saying, or Buc-ee's, exactly. I mean.
So you can have, we can have ultimately, just what I'm looking for next time we meet will be your recommendation that we could potentially go to the council members with regarding how we handle billboards.
Yeah.
Please go to the signage section of your LDRs. I think it's section 7 or 8. Look that over. You'll see that there are certain limitations there already. We don't necessarily have to recommend elimination. We could recommend perhaps enhancement of what those rules are. And then ultimately, the last thing is you guys are brand new, and I know you're probably just loaded up with information. At the end of the day, annually, we have to review the comprehensive plan for any conflicts that exist with the land development rules. We've recently had some changes to the land development rules. So look over those changes and then just review the comprehensive plan for any conflicts that may exist. All
There
right?
was also a thing
And
here
listen,
about vice chairman. We need to
Oh,
do
yeah,
some-
oh,
That
thank
doesn't
you.
mean that you need to hot-foot it out of here
No,
either.
no,
Don't
no,
get
no.
any bright ideas. I know where you live.
Listen, I'll make a statement and then, we have a lot of really good people on this, on this commission, and you're right. We've been accused of a lot of things, that's okay. I've had worse. The good news is that we're all grown adults and, we can handle the accusations and the criticism. That's just part of the game. But I appreciate each and every one of yours input, and you guys have got a mountain to climb because there's a lot of stuff you got to learn. But at the end of the day, I think we've got a good team now. I am willing, if based on your desire, I am willing to stay the chair for another year. Next month we vote, if that's what your desire is. But we also have a lot of really great people here that could easily handle this role as well. So the second piece of that is that we need a vice chair. So if you don't mind selecting or thinking who you would like to have as your vice chair, that will be something we'll do next month. Now, I believe this seat comes up for renewal next month as well. So I don't know how we handle that since he was just put into the seat. And then Kyle's, I think, is good for one more year, because what we do is we alter them. It's a 2-year term, and then we alter, but there's no term limits, as long as the council puts us back into that role, okay? They vote on us continuing to be in the role, but there are no term limits any longer. So I think
So his
Mr.
seat
Stein-
will need to be on the council agenda for next month.
Yes, sir, and
First
then
meeting of next month.
now,
Did you catch that? I did.
our meeting is first, so, okay, that's, okay.
Let's see what comes out.
Yeah, I got you, okay. So anyway, those are the things, just think about that, and, thank you for all you do, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, for all of the input that you've provided. We appreciate everybody, thank you.